People put a lot of love into these products. This opening nails it. Apple's creations weren't just tech. They were infused with emotion and care. It's Steve's ethos, from the Apple I to the Macintosh, took the dawn of Apple in 1976, when Steve and his friend Steve Wozniak, began assembling what would come to be known as the Apple I in the Jobs family's garage. The word computer conjured images of hulking machines tended by professional programmers. A single company, IBM, dominated the industry, but Steve and Woz were part of a new generation of creative thinkers, engineers, and hobbyists trying to build small, cheap machines that they could program themselves. When Apple launched, Steve was 21, precocious but inexperienced and unpolished. The company's breakthrough came with the introduction of the Apple II, a machine that could run right out of the box, with cassette storage and a built-in color screen. Within a year, Apple was one of the fastest-growing companies in America, and by the time Steve turned 30, he was the public face of a Fortune 500 company. As inside Apple, his ideas and passion were inspiring, but Steve's management style was divisive. He began clashing with his hand-picked CEO John Sculley. In September 1985, the Apple board fired Steve. Later, when he talked about these first years at Apple, Steve focused on one thing: Macintosh, the computer that he and a tight-knit team introduced to the world in 1984. To Steve, Macintosh was everything technology should be. It was streamlined and practical, simple and sophisticated, a tool for enhancing creativity as much as productivity. In another age, Steve believed, the people on the Macintosh team would have been writers, musicians, or artists. The feelings and the passion that people put into it were completely indistinguishable from a poet or a painter, he said. He called their work a form of love, and their product, or computer, for the rest of us. With a mouse as well as arrow keys, desktop icons instead of programming commands, and, at startup, instead of a blinking cursor, a smile. Steve and Woz challenged IBM's reign from a garage, their Apple I a scrappy rebellion. The Apple II's plug-and-play brilliance made Apple a juggernaut. But Steve's intensity clashed with Sculley, leading to his ousting. His heart stayed with the Macintosh, a machine that felt like art, built with love, designed to empower everyone. The Macintosh revolution. It ushered in a revolution, Steve recalled 23 years later, during the rollout of another world-changing innovation, the iPhone. I remember the week before we launched the Mac, we all got together, and we said, every computer is going to work this way. You can't argue about that anymore. You can argue about how long it will take, but you can't argue about it anymore. In 1984, Steve knew the Macintosh's graphical interface and mouse were the future. Reflecting in 2007, he saw it as a revolution like the iPhone. His certainty was bold and dead-on. Steve on launching Apple in 1984. Steve recalled the friendships behind Apple. I met Woz when I was 13 in a friend of mine's garage. He was, I think, about 18. We ended up talking for hours. I was real impressed with him. I thought he was great. He had a good sense of humor, and we had a common interest in electronics that sort of bound us together, even though we were totally different in every other way possible. We're sort of like two planets in our own orbits that every so often intersect each other. There's a bond there that will last as long as we both live. In 1996, the year Apple celebrated its 20th anniversary, Steve recalled how a teen hobby building computers turned into a business. The reason Woz and I built a computer was that we wanted one, and we couldn't afford to buy one. They were thousands of dollars at that time. We were just two teenagers. We started trying to build them and scrounging parts around Silicon Valley where we could. After a few attempts, we managed to put together something that was the Apple I. All of our friends wanted them too. It was taking up all of our spare time because our friends were not that skilled at building them. So Woz and I were building them for them. Have we thought, if we could just get what's called a printed circuit board, where you could just plug in the parts, instead of having to hand wire the whole thing, we could cut the assembly time down from maybe 50 hours to more like an hour. Woz sold his HP calculator, and I sold my VW Macrobus, and we got enough money together to pay someone to design one of these printed circuit boards for us. Our goal was to just sell them as raw printed circuit boards to our friends and make enough money to recoup our calculator and transportation. What happened was that one of the early computer stores said, "Well, I'll take 50 of these computers, but I want them fully assembled," which was a twist that we'd never thought of. We went and bought the parts to build 100 computers. We built 50 of them and delivered them. We got paid in cash and ran back and paid the people that sold us parts. Then we had the classic Marxian profit realization crisis, which was our profit wasn't liquid. It was in 50 computers sitting on the floor. We decided we had to start learning about sales and distribution so that we could sell the 50 computers and get back our money. That's how we got in the business. Steve's bond with Woz, sparked by late night electronics chats, birthed Apple. Building the Apple I because they couldn't afford a computer shows pure passion. Selling their prized possessions, Woz's calculator, Steve's van, and pivoting to assembled units for a store turned their hobby into a business. It's hustle at its finest. To the New Yorker interview, Steve's first appearance in a national publication came in a 1977 issue of the New Yorker. At a booth marked Apple Computer Inc., we paused to chat with the young man in charge, who introduced himself as Stephen Jobs, the company's vice president for operations. Mr. Jobs was pleased at the turnout for the exhibition. "I wish we'd had these personal machines when I was growing up," he said. "People have been hearing all sorts of things about computers during the past 10 years through the media. Supposedly, computers have been controlling various aspects of their lives. Yet, in spite of that, most adults have no idea of what a computer really is, of what it can or can't do. Now, for the first time, people can actually buy a computer for the price of a good stereo, interact with it, and find out all about it. It's analogous to taking apart 1955 Chevys, or consider the camera. There are thousands of people across the country taking photography courses. They'll never be professional photographers. They just want to understand what the photographic process is all about. Same with computers. We started a little personal computer manufacturing company in a garage in Los Altos in 1976. Now we're the largest personal computer company in the world. We make what we think of as the Rolls Royce of personal computers. It's a domesticated computer. People expect blinking lights, but what they find is that it looks like a portable typewriter, which, connected to a suitable readout screen, is able to display in color. There's a feedback it gives to people, and the enthusiasm of the users is tremendous. We're always asked what it can do, and it can do many things. But in my opinion, the real thing it is doing right now is to teach people how to program the computer. Recalling Mr. Jobs' wish that he had had such machines when he was growing up, we asked him if he would mind telling us his age. 22, Mr. Jobs said. At 22, Steve's a showman, comparing computers to Chevys and cameras, tools for curiosity, calling the Apple a domesticated computer. Makes it approachable, like a typewriter with a color screen. His focus on teaching programming shows his mission to empower users. At SARS Aspen Design Conference Fs, Steve spoke to designers at this annual gathering in Aspen, Colorado on June 15, 1983, 5 months after Apple introduced the Lisa computer. How many of you are over 36 years old? You were born pre-computer. Computers are 36 years old. I think there's going to be a little slice in the timeline of history as we look back. A pretty meaningful slice right there. A lot of you are products of the television generation. I'm pretty much a product of the television generation, but to some extent starting to be a product of the computer generation. But the kids growing up now are definitely products of the computer generation, and in their lifetimes the computer will become the predominant medium of communication, just as the television took over from the radio, took over from even the book. Why, computers are really dumb. They're exceptionally simple, but they're really fast. But here's the key thing. Let's say I could move 100 times faster than anyone in here. In the blink of your eye, I could run out there, grab a bouquet of fresh spring flowers, run back in here, and snap my fingers. You would all think I was a magician, and yet I would basically be doing a series of really simple instructions, running out there, grabbing some flowers, running back, snapping my fingers. But I could just do them so fast that you would think that there was something magical going on. And it's the exact same way with a computer. It can do about 1 million instructions per second. And so we tend to think there's something magical going on, when in reality, it's just a series of simple instructions. One of the reasons I'm here is because I need your help. If you've looked at computers, they look like garbage. All the great product designers are off designing automobiles or buildings, but hardly any of them are designing computers. People are going to be spending 2-3 hours a day interacting with these machines, longer than they spend in the car. And so the industrial design, the software design, and how people interact with these things certainly must be given the consideration that we give automobiles today, if not a lot more. And I think we have a chance with this new computing technology meeting people in the 80s. The fact that computers and society are out on a first date in the 80s. We have a chance to make these things beautiful, and we have a chance to communicate something through the design of the objects themselves. Steve's Aspen speech is electric, framing computers as the next big medium. His magician analogy demystifies tech. Speed, not magic, makes it powerful. His plea for beautiful design, as computers become daily companions, is a call to shape a new cultural force. On the Macintosh was less than a year old, but clearly poised to transform the personal computer industry when Steve reflected on its significance with reporter David Sheff. One of the things I love is that with Macintosh, you can write memos that are Times Roman or Helvetica, or you can throw in an Old English if you want to have a little fun for a party, for a volleyball announcement. Or you can use a very serious font for something very serious. And you can express yourself. It's sort of like in 1844, the telegraph was invented, and it was an amazing breakthrough in communications. But it wouldn't have worked. And the reason it wouldn't have worked was because you would have had to learn this whole sequence of strange incantations. Morse code in this case. Dots and dashes in this case, to use the telegraph, and it took about 40 hours to learn how to use Morse code, and a majority of people would never have learned how to use Morse code. So fortunately, in the 1870s, Alexander Graham Bell filed the patents for the telephone, another radical breakthrough in communications that performed basically the same function, but people already knew how to use it. The neatest thing about it was that, in addition to allowing you to communicate with just words, it allowed you to sing. It allowed you to intone your words with meaning beyond the simple linguistics. We're in the same exact parallel situation today. Some people are saying we need to put an IBM PC on every desk in America to improve productivity. But it won't work. The special incantations you have to learn this time are slash, QZs, and things like that. Most people are not going to learn slash, QZs any more than they're going to learn Morse code. And that's what Macintosh is all about. It's the first telephone of our industry. But the neatest thing about it to me is the same as the telephone to the telegraph. Macintosh lets you sing. It lets you use special fonts. It lets you make drawings and pictures or incorporate other people's drawings or pictures into your documents. There's even in business. You're seeing 5-page memos get compressed down to a 1-page memo because there's a picture to express the key concept. And so we're seeing less paper flying around and more quality of communication. And it's more fun. There's always been this myth that really neat, fun people at home all of a sudden get very dull and boring and serious when they come to work, and it's simply not true. So if we can again inject that liberal arts spirit into this very serious realm of business, I think it would be a worthwhile contribution. So Steve's telegraph to telephone analogy is genius. The Macintosh, intuitive and expressive, lets users sing through fonts and graphics. It transforms work, shorter, clearer memos, and brings a liberal arts spirit to business, making computing human and fun. To our speech to Apple employees, Steve introduced the Macintosh and its iconic commercial, which ran during the 1984 Super Bowl at an Apple sales meeting in October 1983. Hi, I'm Steve Jobs. It is 1958. IBM passes up the chance to buy a young, fledgling company that has invented a new technology called xerography. 2 years later, Xerox is born, and IBM has been kicking themselves ever since. It is 10 years later, the late 60s. Digital Equipment, Hue DXC, and others invent the minicomputer. IBM dismisses the minicomputer as too small to do serious computing, and therefore unimportant to their business. DESI grows to become a multi-$100 million corporation before IBM finally enters the minicomputer market. It is now 10 years later, the late 70s. In 1977, Apple, a young, fledgling company on the West Coast, invents the Apple II, the first personal computer as we know it today. IBM dismisses the personal computer as too small to do serious computing and unimportant to their business. The early 80s, 81, Apple II has become the world's most popular computer. Apple has grown to a $300 million company, becoming the fastest growing corporation in American business history, with over 50 competitors vying for a share. IBM enters the personal computer market in November 81 with the IBM PC FR 1983. Apple and IBM emerge as the industry's strongest competitors, each selling approximately $1 billion worth of personal computers in 1983. It is now 1984. It appears IBM wants it all. Apple is perceived to be the only hope to offer IBM a run for its money. Dealers initially welcoming IBM with open arms now fear an IBM-dominated and controlled future. They are increasingly and desperately turning back to Apple as the only force that can ensure their future freedom. IBM wants it all, and is aiming its guns on its last obstacle to industry control. Apple. Will Big Blue dominate the entire computer industry? High audience. No, the entire information age. High audience, no, was George Orwell right about 1984. Steve runs the 1984 commercial. Directed by Ridley Scott, the ad depicts a dystopian Orwellian world. In one scene, people dressed in grey, their heads shaved, sit expressionless in front of a large screen on which a dictator drones nonsense. A woman in bright red running shorts and a Macintosh shirt bursts into the room. She hurls a hammer at the screen, destroying it. The commercial ends with a promise on January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984. P-Naga, there is tumultuous applause and shouting from the audience. Once it dies down, Steve resumes. That ad is going to run 1 week before Macintosh is introduced. And our ad agency that put it together is here today. Chiat Day. Pious Steve's speech is a battle cry, framing Apple as the rebel against IBM's Orwellian control. The 1984 ad, with its hammer, throwing hero, rallies employees around freedom and creativity. Tula's interview with Michael Moritz. Steve and Michael Moritz, a reporter who would soon switch careers and become a venture capitalist, spoke at Steve's office at Apple in May 1984. They covered a wide range of topics, including Steve's thoughts on product design. Steve Jobs. I went around and looked at Cuisinarts when we were designing Mac. It was like my Cuisinart week, a Michael Moritz. But no other particular products influenced you. Say, from the late 70s or something. S.J. Well, we're around automobiles our whole lives. I've never been a car guy, but I've always loved Volkswagen Beetles. I've always loved Volkswagen vans, actually, too. Just a bunch of little things, wine labels, paintings in galleries. Just simple things. Not anything real profound. Just lots and lots of little things. I don't think my taste in aesthetics is that much different than a lot of other people's. The difference is that I just get to be really stubborn about making things as good as we all know they can be. That's the only difference. MZ. Yeah, I think you're being modest. E.S. John, well, things get more refined as you make mistakes. I've had a chance to make a lot of mistakes. Your aesthetics get better as you make mistakes. But the real big thing is, if you're going to make something, it doesn't take any more energy, and rarely does it take more money, to make it really great. All it takes is a little more time, not that much more, and a willingness to do so, a willingness to persevere until it's really great. Our Steve's design philosophy, drawing from Cuisinarts, Beetles, wine labels, shows his eye for everyday beauty. His insistence that great design takes only time and perseverance, not more money, is why the Mac felt so refined. To interview with Newsweek, Steve left Apple in September 1985 after losing a power struggle with CEO John Sculley. The departure was officially a resignation, but Steve considered it a betrayal. A few weeks later, he spoke to Newsweek. Newsweek, how did you react when you heard the Apple board's decision how to sue you? These were people that you knew and worked with for a long time. Steve Jobs, oh yeah. I mean, in my wildest imagination, I couldn't have come up with such a wild ending to all of this. So I had 10 of the best years of my life, and I don't regret much of anything. I personally, I want to build things. I'm 30. I'm not ready to be an industry pundit. What I'm best at doing is finding a group of talented people and making things with them. I respect the direction that Apple is going in. But for me personally, I want to make things. And if there's no place for me to make things there, then I'll do what I did twice before. I'll make my own place. I did it in the garage when Apple started, and I did it in the metaphorical garage when Mac started. E.S.J. Though the outside world looks at success from a numerical point of view, my yardstick might be quite different than that. My yardstick may be how every computer that's designed from here on out will have to be at least as good as a Macintosh. E.S.J. One of the 5 most difficult days was that day John Sculley, Apple's CEO, said at the analysts' meeting about there not being a role for me in the future, and he said it again in another analysts' meeting a week later. He didn't say it to me directly. He said it to the press. You've probably had somebody punch you in the stomach, and it knocks the wind out of you and you can't breathe. If you relax, you'll start breathing again. That's how I felt all summer long. The thing I had to do was try to relax. It was hard, but I went for a lot of long walks in the woods and didn't really talk to a lot of people. Steve's exit from Apple was a gut punch. Yet he's resolute. He's a builder, not a pundit. His pride in the Macintosh as a benchmark for all future computers shows his lasting impact. The betrayal by Scully, aired publicly, left him reeling, but his walks in the woods reveal a quiet resilience. These years, 1976 to 1985, show Steve's evolution from a garage tinkerer to a visionary leader. The Apple I sparked a revolution, but the Macintosh, with its simplicity and soul, was his love letter to the world. His design obsession, from Cuisinarts to fonts, made tech human. His ousting was brutal, but his resolve to keep building never wavered. What does this era of Steve's life stir in you? How does his passion for creation inspire you? Drop your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video.